if I'm not there to stop the vision.
Yeah.
So if you just do me audio, so if you just stare at the phone now.
Yeah, I'm staring at the phone right now, yeah.
Okay, cool. So like, just use me as a voice and nothing else. So we're going to record you saying hello to me because we're going to put that into the program. So we'll start with me saying, thank you for coming and, you know, welcome. And then
just one detail. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
In the gun you sent me, you told me to take off my glasses, so I did.
Okay.
So I'll just take them off this time also,
perfect.
I guess.
Yeah. Can you see?
Yeah, well, it's
About.
blurry, but
Just about. Okay, so if you carry on looking at the phone camera.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So hello, and how do I pronounce your name? Because I'm terrible with French pronunciation.
Guillaume.
Guillaume.
Guillaume. That's French for William, in fact.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to Guillaume. Okay.
Guillaume. Yeah. Good.
Guillaume. Okay. Okay. Thank you for joining us, Guillaume. Nice to meet you.
Nice. Okay. Just okay. I'm recording right now. Okay.
Okay, it's on now. Great. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for joining us today, Guillaume. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. My pleasure to be here today.
Okay, great. I'm going to just ask you, we've already watched a film about your job and a bit about what you do, and we understand the impact of COVID on your job. That's what you talked about in the video, is that right?
A little. I spoke a little about the COVID. Okay. I spoke on the first video about mental health and radicalization and violent extremism.
And what you do, your job?
Yeah, but my job, yeah.
Okay, great. So we know about your job now. So I want to ask you, in what way has the COVID situation exposed, do you think, the link between mental health and violent extremism? I mean, in what way has it highlighted it for you?
What it really has highlighted is that there are lots of people who believe in conspiracy theories, and their conspiracy theories, in fact, is a way for them to channel their aggressivity, their violence. It's not so much the theory itself which makes them violent. It's more their violence which expresses itself through this media of a conspiracy. And this COVID, this pandemic, it has many links to a conspiracy theory. First thing, it's universal. It's all around the world. I mean, every country in the entire world is hit by the COVID. So it's global, it's universal, it's the entire world. So that fits very well the necessity of conspiracy theory. Basically, somebody who believes in a theory, in a conspiracy theory, basically it's the war against him and his friends, him and his group, but it's the war against our group. So this COVID situation fits very nicely into it. Second thing also is that, well, of course, the COVID is a virus, but nobody's really sure where it comes from. You know, officially it comes somewhere in East Asia, in China, but maybe it was the Americans in their lab who created it, or maybe the Russians created it in their lab, or maybe the Chinese, or who knows. So the second thing which fits quite well conspiracy theory is there is one clear object, which you know, a virus, the COVID, but you can't really know for sure what it comes from. So those are the two main characteristics of the pandemic, which make it very, very problematic in the context of violent extremism, because it fits the frame of mind of people who believe in conspiracy theories.
And in what way do you think do you think it's created more mental health issues, and do you think that in turn may affect our jobs as practitioners and as policymakers in terms of violent extremism? I mean, do you expect there to be more mental health issues as a result of this crisis?
There will be more mental health issues. I think there will be mainly among the general population. People are going to lose their job. People are going to divorce. People are going to lose a lot of money. So there are people who are going to have very strong depressions. Some people who may commit suicide. It can be pretty hard for a lot of people. But I would say it's more the loss of a job, the loss of a home, a marriage which breaks up. But the COVID is not going to create a pathology such as schizophrenia or a psychosis or delusion or things like this. However, is going to feed people who have delusions. It's going to feed their imagination. It's going to feed their delusions and their disease, their mental disease. So I think it's quite different from people who have a disease and people who have not.
And I guess for people who have the disease and who also have violent extremist thoughts,
Yes,
what do you think this scenario does for them?
I'm not sure it's going to make it much worse. It's may make it a little worse, but it's not going to change dramatically their way of seeing things, their convictions in the theory, or the way in which they become violent, or the reasons for which they become violent.
Is there a worry for
it may add an extra layer, but it won't change the global picture.
Okay. And what about for us as practitioners not being able to access vulnerable people, or, for example, people who we think may have mental health issues? Is that a worry in this time because we're not accessing people, we're not really able to assess them? So it might be that somebody is in a vulnerable situation and we are unable to help them. Is that something that you think is happening, or?
Yes and no. During the very first the part of the pandemic in March, April, May, we practitioners didn't really know how to react. We didn't really know what could happen, what might happen, what might not happen, how people would react or not. Today, we have this background, so we know a bit more about what goes on and what does not go on. And also, I think we're more ready to go towards the patients, to go just knock at the door, just ask how they are, go and see them, and have a contact with them to see where you're not answering the phone, you're not coming anywhere anymore to the hospital. So if there's something wrong, maybe we could help you. I think there is this possibility now we have to go directly to see the people where they live or where they are, to inquire about their health, their mental health. So I think yes, the pandemic makes things more complicated. But yes, we have learned from what happened in March, April, May, and now I think we're better prepared to cope with what's going to happen.
I mean, do you feel like there's a job for us to do in terms of contacting and maintaining contact with vulnerable people? How important is that during this second wave, during this whole crisis, to maintain contact with vulnerable people, to monitor their mental health, to keep making sure they're okay?
I think it's the most important thing in mental health care, COVID or no COVID. Being close to the people, being reliable, knowing that they can depend on us, which also means if they call, that we can go and see where they are, their place, their home, going and just and visit them. I think it's the most important step, more in a way, probably more than the proper diagnosis, more than the proper medication, more than the proper hospital or the proper treatment. I think the personal human contact is, to me, is undoubtedly it's the most important element in mental health care.
And what about digital contact and accessing people digitally? How important do you feel that is, and what's your take on it?
I think it's an ersatz. It's not as good as the physical contact, but it's better than nothing. What is important for patients is after a while, somebody who suffers from schizophrenia, he starts to understand more or less what his problem is, and he understands that he does need help, that he can get some help, maybe not everything he wants. And what the patients want is they want somebody who's reliable, somebody they can depend on, somebody they'll call at 3 p.m. and on any random day, and the doctor will say, okay, I can talk to you on the phone now, or I'm sorry, I'm already with somebody else, I'll call you back in an hour, or we'll see on Zoom in an hour. So what patients want is they want to be sure that the link they have with their doctor is not broken by the COVID, is not stopped. And patients are not fools. They may have mental health issues, but they're not fools. They know the doctor doesn't have the miracle solution. They know they don't have the treatment which is going to cure them forever. What they want to know is that when they need to talk to the doctor will answer, in a way, whatever the answer may be.
Well, I mean, I know in the UK that during the first sort of wave of COVID that lots of the support work from the health profession fell away because resources were all put towards dealing with the anticipation, at least, of a large-scale crisis in terms of hospitalization. I mean, and it took away lots of that kind of resource from phone calls through to interaction from GPs right through to psychiatrists and other professionals who were taken away and put into different situations. I mean, what about France? How have people suffered because this thing that they need, this contact, this reliability, has that been taken away to some extent during this crisis?
Well, yes, it has been taken away because patients were not allowed to come and see their psychiatrist in the hospital where they were used to seeing him. What happened is that we all had a few guidelines from the government, which were helpful, but which were basically you should not have contact with your patient unless it's absolutely necessary because he needs his treatment, he needs an injection, or he needs to go to the hospital. Unless it's absolutely necessary, you should contact them via on the phone or via social media on Zoom or Teams or whatever. People who have mental health issues, usually they can use a phone. Social media, it's more complicated. So usually what happened, it was mostly through the phone that the doctors, the nurses kept in touch with the patients. But we don't have really feedback on how well it worked. But from my own experience, from the friends with whom I work and from colleagues, I think it's we kept in touch with most of the patients most of the time, I would say. Those patients who really needed to come and see us, I mean, of course, the police wasn't going to stop them in the street and say, go back home. And, they would just say to the police, where I have to see my doctor, he's a psychiatrist. And whenever the police hears psychiatrist, I mean, police officers are, they're human beings. They understand, okay, I mean, this guy isn't going to go shopping. He needs to see a psychiatrist. So let's let him go there. So in my opinion, things weren't good, but they weren't terrible either.
Okay, that's good to hear. And in terms of, we talked about kind of the fallout from COVID in terms of socioeconomic impact of this crisis and its manifestation in terms of mental health issues, as a result of, as you said, unemployment, divorce, along with a number of other kind of continuing, I guess you call them pathologies. In the post-COVID world, as these issues manifest, and lots of the, things aren't going to get easier, and people are out on the streets, and people are mixing. What do you feel like we should be wary of? Do you feel like do you feel worried for the future here, or, in terms of where society is headed, and also some of the issues you've raised around extremism and mental health issues? How do you feel about what's happening and what's about to happen?
I'm not a soothsayer.
Good question.
I could make predictions, but there is the American economist John Kenneth Galbraith. He famously said many years ago that pundits don't forecast because they know, they forecast because they're asked to. You're asking me to forecast, so I will, but we're in the middle of the storm, so I don't know when the sun is going to shine again. But in my opinion, in the middle term, longer run, I don't think things will be that bad. I mean, yes, there will be difficult from an economical point of view. Many people are going to lose their job, but society as a whole is not going to crumble apart. I mean, in France, in England, in America, in China, in Russia, all over the world, societies are not going to collapse. People are going to go back to their life. They're going to adapt to those modifications regarding all the health issues. They're going to be, I think they're going to be much more, they'll be much more attentive to, at least I hope, to things like global warming, like the lack of fresh water in many countries. Many countries don't have enough fresh water to drink. I think people will be much more interested in those questions, and they will probably be more willing to do even social work, benevolent work, even do things to try and change the way of life. I mean, it may sound a little pompous to say change the way of life, but in the middle run, long run, I'm rather optimistic. I think people are going to learn the lesson. People are going to understand that there is nothing more important than having a good, well-paid job. Of course, everybody wants more money. I do, like everybody else. But I think it points out to people that there is more to life than simply going to work and trying to make more money and have a better car every year. So I'm not that pessimistic about things, really. Not in the middle run, in the long run, anyway.
But as you said, you're not a soothsayer. I get that was a good quote as well, I think. Very good quote you did there. A very good French philosophical answer to a question.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. And I haven't really listened to your clip yet, so I can't really comment on. I mean, I know I talked to you before about your visit to prison and how you understood when you met those prisoners that they were suffering from mental health issues, and that they were equivalents right across the board with other people in society and with other extremists, and there's similar patterns of behavior. I think I remember you discussing that before.
Yeah.
Do you feel that your thinking around this, is that I'm just putting this, is that something that's widely recognized, this link between mental health, or do you feel it isn't really talked about enough?
2 or 3 years ago, in France at least, everybody was convinced that someone who was radicalized, who was a jihadi, he necessarily had a mental health issue. He necessarily had a psychiatric problem. Now, 5 years later, after the Bataclan, we have more experience. People have become more educated. The government, the police have learned a lot, and they realize that maybe less than 10% of radicalized jihadists, violent extremists, less than 10% have a real serious mental health issue. 90% of the people they have problems, but not severe problems. Now I think that everybody in France, politicians, the general public, everybody is quite okay with that idea. What is complicated is that every time there is a new terrorist attack, we've had 2 over the past 2 weeks, people have a tendency to go back to their gut feeling. And the gut feeling, when you see somebody doing a horrible crime and cutting somebody's head, you say, I mean, who in his right mind could do that? I mean, we would understand if he shot the person, but cutting off his head, he's a savage, he's a monster. So when you see something that horrible, the general gut feeling is that that guy has to be crazy. He's a lunatic, he's mad. Even though he may be, we'll never know for sure, but you know, when there's a lot of emotion, or the knowledge or the rational thought just takes a back step and the emotion speaks first. And after a few weeks, a few months, when people calm down, when they can take a step back on what happened, then they remember that what happened was 6 months ago, it happened 5 years ago. It's probably not that different. So you know, I think we should be very, very worried of what happens at the peak of a crisis. Because at the peak of a crisis, it's always the emotions that speak out. It's always the gut feelings that scream out, and where it's a normal reaction, but it's certainly not the best one.
That's a really interesting point generally, that because, you know, all of us are in this kind of existential moment in many ways, there's sometimes irrationality and kind of, I guess, quick judgment, emotion comes into decision making, and we need to take a step back and have a kind of more objective viewpoint. Maybe that's all of us, practitioners, policymakers, everybody at the moment.
Yeah, we really need to be able to do that.
It's difficult. You're trained for that though, right?
I'm trained for that. It's not so much where it's my training, but it's mostly that I work in that kind of situation every day. I mean, every week in the prison, I see a detainee who committed some horrible crime, or maybe not every week, but regularly. And also I follow them. There is this guy who probably raped and murdered a teenager. I've been following him for the past 3 years. So now I'm getting used to his way of thinking. He clearly has a delusional problem, even though it's not very clear. But I'm not naive about what happened, what he did. And even though it's probably not very correct to say that, in a way, I'm happy he's going to be in prison for a long time, because he is very dangerous. But I no longer have this feeling of horror I no longer have this feeling of disgust when I talk with him, when I try to make him understand what he did. You know, because I've known him for 2 years now, because I've seen him regularly in those 2 years, the similar habits of seeing him. As soon as I see him now, I know he's a human being. He has a serious mental health issue, but I can work pretty, I mean, as well as I can, at least, I hope, because I no longer have those emotions I first time when I saw him. The first time I saw this guy, I mean, it was because his story was all over the media. The first time I saw this guy, I recognized him from the papers and the television. And my feeling was, I mean, what am I going to do with this guy? I mean, it's my job and I don't want to do it. I mean, somebody kick him out of my office. I don't want to see him, you know.
Wow, that's
And
hard.
where, and you know, that's what I felt. And I think it was good that I could feel that because, you know, well, yes, it's my job, it's my training. I knew that I would have this feeling. And I really said to myself, okay, just let it all go out. I mean, I didn't tell the guy what I thought of him, of course not. I just felt like that. And I just said to myself, okay, let go of your feelings. I mean, this guy did something really horrible to a kid, but okay, your job is not to punish him. You're not the judge, you're not the police. I mean, you're a doctor, you're a psychiatrist, you're here to help him because obviously he needs help, as disgusting and as cruel and as horrible as what he did may be.
Tough, 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 tough. I mean, I guess I have the same thing where I have to look at footage sometimes and then deal with, I guess, the kind of
Yeah,
emotional fallout of that. Well, look, we've covered a lot of ground, so thanks very much for your time.
my pleasure.
Is there
Thank
anything
you.
missing? Do you think there's anything you wanted to discuss that I didn't ask you about?
Uh, uh, let's try and all stay optimistic, no matter what the political situation is, the mental health situation, what the epidemic is. I mean, you know, we only have one world, we only have one life. So let's all try to make it a little better in our own ways.
Nice, nice. Okay, good. That's a good final comment. Well, look, I'm going to say goodbye, and then I won't hang up from the Zoom call, but I want you to keep on looking into the camera, and we'll just say goodbye to each other because I'm going to use that in the interview. So, thanks very much for joining us,
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
and you've left us with lots of things to think about. So, thanks very much, and goodbye.
Okay, goodbye.
Okay, great. Now you can switch the phone off.
Okay.
I'm just going to put my video back on. Yeah, cool. That was great. So you're going to send that to me on Transfer XL then from the phone this time again, yeah?
Yeah. Wait.